Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Hogarth's Global Astrology. Know your planets, know yourself, or know your nation, know your nation, know yourself are interchangeable. So, welcome to Hogarth's Global Astrology. I am, of course, Hogarth, and today I've got a little bit of a special for you guys. And oh God, I was supposed to put this video out earlier. I got busy, was networking. And a friend of mine was talking about, consultations, business, various bits and bobs, stuff like that. Anyway, today is going to be a little bit of a special. As we know, we've got the midterms coming up very soon on the 8th of November. But before that, we have the solar eclipse on the 25th of November. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a whistle stop tour around the charts of Xi Jinping, Joe Biden, Duck L'Orange, and Putinshka. Yeah, we all know who Putinshka is, and it means slut sauce, by the way. Anyway, so in Italian. And so what I've done is I've printed off their charts. Here are their charts, and I have gone through them to show where the eclipses are falling in their charts, lunar and solar eclipses, and also as well which areas of life are being affected by the transits. Yeah, by the transits of Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So it's actually quite a comprehensive thing that we're looking at today, and I'm going to try and do like a little whistle stop tour around. You're going to hear a little beeping from a timer that I've set for that will go off every 15 minutes, and I'm going to see if I can get this done in half an hour, if I can, because it's late and I don't want the video to take too long to upload, and by the time it's uploaded and I've put in all the detail and all the clearances have gone through, it could be another couple of hours, and I don't want to be up too late because I'm attending a conferencing event in the morning about Portugal. I'll be there with some friends. Right. So that gives you the overview. Now, why am I focusing on the leaders? Because when you focus on the leaders of charts, it can tell you a lot of what is going to happen in the country or is happening. And this is something particularly as well that Vedic astrologers tend to use. We tend to look at the leaders' charts, and that can let you know about what's going on and stuff like that in the West as well, but of course more specifically so for Vedic astrology. Right. So I'm going to begin. I'm going to see if I can stick to the same sequence, but when one is recording, one never knows how these things will pan out. So I'm going to start with Joe Biden. Yeah, I'm going to start with Joe Biden. Now, his chart is very interesting because out of the charts, the transits of Jupiter in his chart are the luckiest, so to speak. They're the luckiest. So Jupiter is looking good in his chart. However, the lunar eclipse for him, I think, is along with who else? Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. The lunar eclipses are probably going to affect them a bit more. Anyway, so let's begin. So here we are. Here is the chart of Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, just in case we weren't sure, was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania on the 20th of the 11th, 1942 at 8:30 a.m. Yeah. So that's the one that I've got for him. So what is it that we need to know? From today, Mars over here, here's Mars, has entered sidereal Gemini. Sidereal Gemini. Now, in Western astrology, which is 24 degrees ahead, of course, they've got Mars way into Gemini, but actually it is floating around about 0 degrees of Gemini, and that is very, very important. It's going to spend about the next 2 weeks or so in Gemini. It will come back into sidereal Taurus in November. And then it's going to stay in sidereal Taurus, going retrograde and then direct until about March. Early-ish March, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. So it will turn out that Mars will have spent a total of about 8 months, 7, 8 months in the sign of sidereal Taurus, except for that sojourn into Gemini where it is now. And what is Taurus all about? Money, food, assets, yeah? Stuff like that, economy, liquidity. What have we been seeing? A lot of chaos there. Yeah, a lot of difficulties, especially for the UK, as you guys have seen. And I will quickly say, I'm just going to cover this bit here and cover this bit here. You will see the turd, yeah, Liz Turd, as I have mentioned, she's had to apologize to the nation for the absolute financial debacle that she's unleashed on the UK, and she just looks catatonic. She just looks zombified. I'm not going to do her chart because it's not worth doing. Yeah, we just know it's rubbish. Yeah, absolute rubbish. Huge hubris, and all of this idea of kind of throwing Kwasi Kwarteng on under the bus as if he came up with the economic plan idea on his own. In the UK, just to say, it is the Chancellor and the PM that work together on a budget. A Chancellor cannot pass his budget, his or her budget, without the blessing of the Prime Minister. It is impossible. Yeah, it is impossible. So when she sacked him, she should have also sacked herself. And this is why you probably would have seen there's not been that much cussing out, so to speak, of Kwasi Kwarteng, because everyone knows it was her plan as well. And if anything, they say that she was even more radical than he was, and it's all blown up in her face. So this just shows, this is why you don't have fanatics and ideologues anywhere near the wheels or levers of power. Very difficult to do, but this is what happens when the cray-crays drive the bus. Yeah, they drive it off a cliff. And what's happened is that the whole thing has been slapped down by reality. Effectively, Jeremy Hunt is also Prime Minister and Chancellor, effectively. He is the de facto Prime Minister, and that's never happened before in UK history, whilst also being the Chancellor as well. So there's that little thing there. Oh, and by the way, her ratings, as she's managed to score the lowest ratings possible of -70 since these kind of things were calculated. And the people that voted her in, the Tory membership, now say they want Boris Johnson back. I mean, come on. Like, this is why the country is in the mess it is in the first place. Because obviously there's a few kind of swiveled-eyed loons, shall we say, that are making decisions on behalf of the rest of the country that are not sound ones. That's not the solution. Trying to get back a prime minister that was disgraced and had to leave because everyone resigned because he lied about this, that, and the other. But at least, Boris does have a bit of talent. He knows how to, rub his head and tap his tummy at the same time and all that kind of stuff. Liz Truss is just, like I said, a cloth-eared turd in need of a flush. And I think they would have just dragged her out already if it wouldn't spook the markets even further. So what I would suspect is that they're going to let the markets calm down a bit more, and then they're going to get rid. The trouble is, they're so dysfunctional, they're not going to be able to hold themselves together. And I think the Home Secretary has just been sacked as well. One can barely keep up with it all. Anyway, let me carry on. So, Joe Biden. So if we look here, we're going to do a whistle-stop tour around his houses. Here he is. He is a Scorpio rising. So if we just count round, this is how the houses go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so he is a Scorpio rising, which means that he is Martian. That means the ruler of his chart is Mars. Mars is very significant for all Scorpios and Aries people. Yeah. So the transit of Mars in going into Gemini today, where it will be staying in Gemini for a few weeks before it retrogrades back into sidereal Taurus, It is currently at 0039 minutes of sidereal Gemini. Now, this falls into Joe Biden's 8th house. Now, what's the 8th house? The 8th house is what? The house of sex, death, and rock and roll. So it deals with transformations. It can be tumultuous, but it can also be energizing and transforming. So what we need to remember is Mars is the chart ruler for Joe Biden. So I'm more inclined to say Mars is more inclined, skewed to protect Joe than harm him. Do you see? Because he's the chart ruler. He's in charge of the body and all of that kind of stuff. However, Mars is a fickle planet. And what I've written here is, I've done a little kind of arrow up here, and I've looked here and I've said, will this affect Biden's health? Because the 8th house can also affect health. Or will it give him transformative speech? Now, why do I say that? Because Gemini is a sign of communication, speech. 8th house is what? Transformation, turning lead into gold. I think we're going to find, and this seems to be happening, but even more so in the next few weeks, we might see Biden speaking up even more vociferously. He may even get criticized for his language, actually. He may be accused of hyperbole or maybe overdoing it, whatever, the right-wing media, as we know, want to kind of throw in his direction. But his sense of speech and communication is going to be energized, and he's going to be wanting to speak in very dynamic and powerful ways, because although the 8th house is a tricky house, it is a house of transformation. So there might be transformation around Biden's speech in some way. He might be adding more oomph, more emphasis as we get closer to this crucial time. He may be talking about things more like democracy being on the ballot, etc., talking more about Roe versus Wade, life and death scenarios. He may also be talking a bit more about his son as well, as we know, Hunter Biden, which is also indicated in his chart. The 8th house is also known as a house of addictions. So he might be speaking more about, supporting his son with his addictions, or there could be more that could emerge because Mars is a male planet. And he also represents real estate and siblings and brothers in particular. But for a person that has children, Mars can represent sons. So what this transit also indicates is that Gemini, communications, media, it could be that the media start talking more about Hunter Biden's vices or secrets or addictions, 8th house stuff, yeah? Or we could see a bit of a transformation in Hunter's fortunes. However, for Joe, this could be quite a dynamic time. This could be a time when he really kind of tries to step up with more powerful and dynamic language. I think he may be criticized for some of it, but look, he's going to get stick and criticism every way because, he's, the GOP want to blame absolutely everything on him. Just as I said they're going to try and blame absolutely everything on Joe. So there's that element there. Now we also see there are these aspects here where I've drawn this drishti. This means planetary sight. This is where the planets are looking. So if we look at Mars is wherever Mars looks, he energizes. It can increase the conflict and all that kind of stuff. But what we need to understand is that Mars is Biden's chart ruler. So he's more inclined to energize in a more positive way, one would like to think. So here, Mars is looking at Joe Biden's 11th house, which deals with hopes and dreams. Yeah, big goals. It also deals with money as well. Also deals with money, big gains. And I put here Jupiter and Mars energizing Joe's biggest dreams. Yeah, so he's also enjoying an aspect from Jupiter. And we'll talk about Jupiter in a second. If we look here as well, Mars is also looking at Joe Biden's 2nd house. The 2nd house deals with family. Yeah, so again, echoes again of, Hunter Biden being in the media. Here he is, Gemini over here. Gemini, Mars, energy, casting here to the 2nd house. So there's going to be conversations, stuff like that, things in connection with money and assets as well. Let's not forget, 2nd house is not only family, it's also assets. But if we look here too, Mars is casting a quincunx, his full 8th aspect onto Joe's 3rd house. 3rd house is about communications, and transiting Saturn is in the 3rd house, yep, in the sign of Capricorn. So if we count from here, 1, 2, 3. And what does this say here? I put Mars heats up Joe's communications and media campaigns. So here, where Mars is heating this up, but also as well, Saturn is here as well, adding Saturn also represents government and stuff like that. So here it's kind of wanting to add gravitas, as it were, to Joe Biden's words, and the seriousness. Oh my God, I forgot to start the timer, typical. And the seriousness of his words in regards to government infrastructure. So we might have Joe trying to speak more about the more medium to long-term projects that he's got going. He's going to be trying to, speak about the Democrats' record, the things that he's passed, because literally Saturn here is also the planet of infrastructure. But Saturn also shows where there is pressure as well being put. And if we look here, Saturn is aspecting Joe Biden's 5th house. So again, 5th house is what? Children. So do we see there's this emphasis again on a child or children? And what have I written here? Joe Biden has the best aspects from Jupiter, because Jupiter is actually going through his 5th house right now. But Hunter Biden in the spotlight again. So we can see here energetically, this is how the GOP are going to try, their fight back. However, Jupiter in the 5th house, either natally or by transit, is quite amazing, because he will aspect the 1st house, which is the body, protecting the body and the reputation. And we need to remember as well that Mars and Jupiter are friends. So Sun, Moon, Mars, and Jupiter are all friends. And when they aspect each other, they help each other. So with Joe being a Scorpio ascendant, and then he's got the Sun here as well, this Jupiter here is helping the kingdom, helping the Sun. So that's very positive for Joe. Here you've got Jupiter looking at Joe's 11th house, dreams and gains. And here you've got Jupiter looking at Joe Biden's 9th house, which is a house of luck and law and stuff like that. It's there with Pluto, which shows that intensity of transformation. But Jupiter is aspecting Jupiter, exalted. So, it looks like that Joe may be getting boons in regards to the law. And if we look here where Saturn's looking, Saturn is also looking at the 9th house, bringing karma's energies there. So there's a kind of pressure and a boon building up in regards to law. And when we look at this from Duck Larange's chart, we can see this is where Biden is sort of like has the advantage over Duck Larange. But when we look down here, we see Saturn is also looking at Joe's 12th house. Now, this is where the solar eclipse is happening on the 25th of October. And what have I written here? I've written here, secret enemies exposed or even eclipsed. Yeah, they could even be eclipsed in some way. It's happening at 7 degrees 49 minutes of sidereal Libra. And I've written here, an enemy could be destroyed, because the 12th house deals with endings and beginnings and endings. The 12th house also deals with secret enemies. Saturn is aspecting, putting pressure on the 12th house, but who is the enemy that that Biden has? Who has got Libra significant? Putinshka, Putinshka, Libra rising. So Putinshka will be having this in the 1st house, so I'll describe that in a minute. So eclipses can be resets, but things come out of the dark. They can have a sudden or surprising effect. They are unpredictable. So just understand, eclipses are unpredictable. But something often comes out of the dark. And if we also understand as well what's happened recently here. So Saturn's looking at the 12th house, enemies being exposed. Look what's happened with Saudi Arabia, with them doing the things with the oil price, trying to get the oil price to go up to affect, the midterms and all of that kind of stuff. So it's like a hidden enemy has been exposed. America rightly or wrongly, is considered, Saudi an ally for a while. Let's just say it's sensible that that relationship is now being reconsidered. What else do I need to talk about? So here, the lunar eclipses, which happen on the 8th of November. Now, this is a little bit more challenging for Joe, this one, because it's happening in his 6th house, and his 6th house is health and healing and overcoming obstacles, also deals with enemies. But this eclipse is also, this lunar eclipse on the 8th of November, on the day of the midterms, is also happening on, or very close to, Joe Biden's moon. So if we look here, there's the moon, there's the lunar eclipse. What have I written here? I've put here lunar eclipse very close to the moon, mental health concern, because the moon also represents the mind, or family matters highlighted, an emotional shock or surprise. Yeah, because the moon also deals not only with the mind but also the emotion. What emotions? Or a reset in thinking and enemies working overtime. So this is also talking about the GOP as well. So this is going to be very interesting also as well. The moon also deals with the public, so there could be something tumultuous when it comes to voting time and the public and stuff like that. But this has to happen. Yeah, this has to happen. In terms of the public, have to come out, vote en masse, vote for democracy to protect democracy. They could also mean the lunatics come out as well, and this could put a lot of pressure. Biden may have a lot of concerns because obviously, there's this aspect of family that's being pursued, which I've already kind of talked about already, but it also shows the midterms are obviously going to play a lot on his on his mind. Yeah, because no one really knows what is going to happen. So prayers for Biden. Wish him the best with his health. He needs to make sure that he sleeps, get rest. So that the mind is clear. Try not to let the situation with Hunter Biden get to him too much, because he has to focus, on the midterms. So for everyone watching, prayers for Joe Biden, for his success and, him doing well. Because, of course, it's important. He is the leader, and the fate of the leader does affect the nation. So there will be challenges here. I think the solar eclipse might be a bit better for him and a bit more difficult for his enemies because it's happening in the 12th house. But the lunar eclipse happening in his 6th house in sidereal Aries with his moon is more challenging. So let's put it that way. So that's Joe Biden. All right, let's look at Duck Larange, and then we'll do Xi Jinping, and then Putinshka. Yeah, it's almost in kind of... Anyway, never mind. Right, so Duck Larange, what's going on with him? So if we look up here, Duck Larange is a Leo rising, sidereal Leo rising, and his sun sign, by the way, is not Gemini, it's Taurus. You think about it, Donald Trump is very much the shadow of Taurus. The shadow side of Taurus is overtly materialistic, possessive, stubborn, obsessed with wealth, always wanting the absolute best, whether one can afford it or not, and kind of almost too opulent in a way and too over the top. And he's also got Uranus and Rahu with the sun, which is just makes it all even more cray and unconventional and unusual. Yeah, so there's that aspect there. So he's actually a sidereal Taurus sun sign, which I think would make a lot more sense for people. Anyway, if we look here, it means transiting Mars, which is the Yoga Karka for Leos and Cancerians. And the Yoga Karka is a very powerful planet. So Mars is powerful not only for Joe Biden because it's the chart ruler, but it's also powerful for Trump as well. However, if we look over here, Mars, it falls into Trump's 11th house, which is the house of desires, great gains, but also friends. Here he's got Mercury here. This is part of the reason why Trump has been able to enjoy a bit of protection for now, because he is in Jupiter Mercury dasher. So he's in the backseat of Jupiter's car, but Mercury is driving. For Leos, Mercury rules the 11th house and the second house. The 11th house deals with great gains, money, finance, friends, rubbing shoulders. Second house is also what? Money, assets, etc. and stuff like that. Mercury is actually a very powerful wealth creating planet for Leos. But Mercury also deals with friends, and he's got Mercury in his own sign in its own house. Here we are, Mercury in Gemini in the 11th house of friends and associates. What has been happening? Time and time and time again, these friends of Duc Larange come out of the woodwork to try and defend him, to try and save him, etc. All of that kind of stuff. Now, on the 22nd of the 10th, 2023, the driver will change and then it will go to Ketu, snip, snip. And this is why I always say around this time, this should be when Duc Larange is finished. Yeah, because here's Ketu is with the moon over here in the 4th house. 4th house is what? Real estate, luxuries, assets, you know, our sense of security. And snip, snip is going to be activated with the moon, which deals with the mind, blows the mind. That's why I was able to predict that Trump would do something absolutely batshit and crazy when in 2021 there was an eclipse right on his moon during the election time period. I think it was actually in November, and I said he's going to do something mad, he's going to do something crazy. And when I looked at his chart or his characteristics via Ivanka's chart, his daughter, her D9 Navamsha chart when she was 40, turning 40, which she's done, I said when she turns 40, there's going to be some kind of legal ramifications or something, altercation with her father in some kind of way, and she's going to have to choose between her husband and her father. She'll likely choose the husband. And I said the husband is also going to be involved in legal matters and finance stuff overseas. Go back and look at those videos in my playlist and you will see this stuff. And I said he's going to do something. I said it's going to be, I said it's like a coup. I said it's like a coup. And that's exactly what he tried to do. Anyway, so if we look here, the transits of Saturn for Duc Larange are a lot more difficult for him because as a Leo, he's got Saturn in, pardon me, the 6th house of enemies and health and trying to overcome obstacles. So Saturn, planet of karma, is sitting in Duc Larange's 6th house, also aspecting himself up here, Venus, women, the wife, assets, money, and Pluto, secrets, 8th house, sex, death, rock and roll, espionage, all happening in the 12th house. Yeah, the 12th house over here, which is foreign lands, overseas, hidden enemies. What is Duc Larange being scrutinized and pressurized on now? Secret, top secret documents that he's been exchanging. What? For trades, goods and services, Venus, in foreign lands, foreign governments, foreign powers, Saturn. Saturn represents government. So here, quite literally, we can see Saturn, planet of government and laws, rules, regulations, sitting in Duc Larange's 6th house of enemies and obstacles and health, aspecting himself and Pluto and Venus in the 12th house of secrets, endings and beginnings. 12th house also deals with health, hospitals and prisons. Yeah, so we can see, ooh, bing, 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 quite a lot going on. If we look here, Saturn is also aspecting Jupiter, like it is for everyone on planet Earth right now, including all the charts that I'm showing here. Saturn is looking at Donald Trump's 8th house. 8th house is what? Sex, death, and rock and roll, espionage, secrets, all of that kind of stuff being emphasized, isn't it? It's all starting to come out. Jupiter is there by transit with Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer. Here's Jupiter by transit. And wherever Jupiter goes, he expands those things. Oh, look, you can't really see it. Oh, there we are. He expands those things. So he's in his own sign of Pisces. This, on certain levels, can bring luck for everyone. Yeah, because we've got Jupiter, ruler of Pisces, in Pisces. However, for Duc Larange, this is Jupiter in the 8th house with the wounded healer as well. Chiron is there as well. So this could actually be worsening his problems in many ways, could actually be making his problems worse or expanding them out. I think this is why so many things are coming out of the closet. Jupiter is also the planet of truth, and he also deals with lawmakers, lawyers, stuff like that. And things haven't quite been going his way, have they? If we look here, I mentioned his Mars. So his Mars is also by transit looking at his 2nd house, which deals with what? Assets and all that stuff. Energizing this Neptune. Jupiter is also looking at Neptune. Neptune deals with what? Scandals. But Jupiter is also aspecting Jupiter. So there still might be a little bit of luck in the bucket for Duck L'Orange. As we've seen, this is probably why he's been able to malinger so long in his various state, because he keeps getting this protection from Jupiter, and he is in Jupiter Dasher. However, Jupiter Ketu will probably be disastrous for him, but from 2023 onwards, it will just get stronger and stronger, all of this stuff. Hopefully I'm not speaking too fast, but I've got lots to get through. So here, the solar eclipse on October 25th, at 7 degrees 49 minutes of sidereal Libra is happening in Duck L'Orange's 3rd house. So what have I written here? Truth social under pressure. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be that popular. Trump's speech under more scrutiny and accountability. Yeah, because Saturn is what? Karma, maturity, accountability. Saturn is aspecting while he's here in sidereal Capricorn by his 10th aspect here. So Duck L'Orange is having what? More accountability and more karma for the things that he's been saying and doing. Oops. So there we are. The things he's been saying and doing. So we can see his speech is under pressure. But this aspect here to the 12th house, that's quite remarkable. And also as well, when Saturn re-entered the 12th house of loss and endings, literally the day after, Ivana Trump was found at the bottom of the stairs. Kid you not. Literally, just, kind of epic. Also as well, he's having pressure on the things that he loves, the things that he adores, where he wants to give his devotion, because his Ceres is being activated as well. And Ceres, what I've found, its energy is about gaining something or losing something, or having something and worrying about losing it, because Ceres is the Roman name for Demeter, and Demeter is the Greek goddess of harvest and the earth. But Demeter had a very famous daughter called Persephone, who was abducted and taken into the underworld. So it can also deal with the loss of something loved. And we all know what Duck L'Orange loves. He loves his money and his assets and power and all this kind of stuff. But it's in the 6th house as well. So this it really could actually affect his health, actually. He has to be careful, Duck L'Orange. All those burgers and all this stress and all that stuff could potentially catch up with him. But here with this aspect, this is really emphasizing, prison and hospitals. Or will he try and do a run at and escape to foreign lands? Maybe he still has a friend, yeah? Friends in powerful friends, 11th house also deals with friends, but powerful friends as well. Mercury is there. Could it be that this is energized by Mars and he somehow manages to escape and lives in exile? We'll have to see. Also as well, if we look here in the Navamsha chart, Saturn is looking at his 10th house of career, squashing the moon and K2. That's very tricky. Saturn is transiting the 8th house, again, sex, death and rock and roll. Aspecting the 2nd house, which deals with money and assets, and also aspecting the 5th house, which deals with children. So when we look at it from that way, that is a bit of a challenge for Duck L'Orange. Going back to Biden's chart, because we look at his Navamsha as well, he has got Saturn in the 4th house, homeland. Yeah, homeland also can deal with domestic politics as well. Makes sense. Up here looking at his 6th house, which is the house of health. So again, but Biden needs to be careful. He needs to make sure he gets some rest and, that he's looking after himself, get sleep, etc. But it's also looking at his 10th house, aspecting Jupiter. So this is this element here where there's this pressure And this emphasis on what? Joe Biden's career. Is he going to run again, etc.? But also as well, he's the president. So again, it makes sense. And it's also looking at his first house here because Biden is a sidereal Libra in his second half of life chart. So here there is the real emphasis on Biden and his presidency and him trying to hold everything together. Whereas for Trump, everything is almost wanting to explode apart. Biden is becoming more disciplined and Duck Larange is just becoming more chaotic. Right, let's look at Xi Jinping. Now, this is interesting. Now, for Xi Jinping, much activation. The first place to look at with Mars today, Xi Jinping was born on the 15th of June, 1953. Now, there isn't a birth time for him, so I've done the classic again, which is what you use 12 midday. So we have to take these, the rising sign with a pinch of salt, because we really can't be sure. But according to this time, his rising sign is Leo, and that's very fitting because Leo does deal with leaders, leadership, kings, queens, presidents, that kind of thing. So it's kind of appropriate. Now, if we look here, the transit of Mars is right on top of the sun in Xi Jinping's chart. Right on top. The sun represents the vitality, the kingdom, our standing, our career, literally like the kingdom. Now, Mars and the sun are friends. Yeah. So this could be quite an empowering influence. But Gemini is contentious for Mars. And Mars, of course, deals with what? War, yeah? Passion, war, conflict, but also strategy, stuff like that. Transiting Mars is getting close to natal Mars, which is at 7 degrees and 27 minutes. So what we'll see is kind of next year, this could really, really emphasize because Mars is going direct and then it's going to retrograde away from Xi Jinping's sun in a few weeks, and then come back again next year. So you could have some kind of, there could be some more skirmishes, more battles and all that stuff, especially in regards to real estate, as we know is under a great deal of pressure in China. But if he is a Leo ascendant, it means Mars rules the 4th house of real estate and the 9th house of law, philosophies and beliefs, travel. So assuming that this is true, assuming, we can't be 100% sure, this aspect is the Martian aspect is definitely applying here on the 5th house and on the 6th house and in the 2nd house. But Mars is the 4th house lord in this scenario, and the 4th house deals with what? Real estate. Also, Mars is the karka, the indicator of real estate on his own. So here there is a heating up, a specific aspect, an energy in regards to the kingdom in Xi Jinping's part and real estate in particular. Many of you will know there's a huge kind of like property issues going on in China where people have got all of these mortgages, but they're now refusing to pay their mortgages because they started paying their mortgages before the houses were built. They were guaranteed that they would be built, but there's been ligatory, like in, I think it's called Evergrande. It's this huge firm that is company that's been building a lot of these houses, gaming the system and all of this kind of stuff. What's happened is that a lot of defaults on debts, properties haven't been completed, all of these various different things have been going on, and it's putting a huge amount of pressure on the housing market. We have ghost towns. They say at the moment there are enough homes for 90 million people in all of China. And they say this is actually more than the population of Germany. Yeah, it's definitely more than the population of France and the UK, you know. So we're talking huge swathes of kind of dead real estate where the brokers or what the people that the companies that have been overbuilding all of this property, it's not had the capacity. No one can afford it as well on the average wage, or they're not connected to hubs of transport, etc. So there's all of these white elephants everywhere in China. It also means Mars is going to be activating the sun, which again, health, vitality. So this could also put Xi Jinping's health under pressure. Mars itself, Mercury, planet of communication, and Uranus. So this transit here next year, when Mars is going to go all over Xi Jinping's planets in Gemini. This is also going to affect the USA chart as well, because the USA has got lots of planets in sidereal Gemini as well, and also Kamala Harris has got her ascendant in Gemini with Rahu at about 1 degree or something like that. So there's lots of change in the pipeline. We'll have to see what Mars will bring, but Mars can be very unpredictable. If we look here, Saturn is in Xi Jinping's 6th house. So again, if he's got the same rising sign as Trump, then Saturn will be in the 6th house, which deals with what? Health and enemies. What have I put here? Matters of health and enemies emphasized. So we'll have to see how that's going to work for Xi Jinping. But this can also deal with subordinates as well. So there could be a little bit of rebellion, maybe even within his subordinates. But he's also going to try and really put his foot down. Saturn is government. Saturn is in Capricorn. Saturn is very strong in the 6th house. But Rahu is here as well. So there's something extreme. He's also not going to stop, thus far, the zero COVID policy, which of course has been affecting the economy and all of that kind of stuff. So we'll have to see on that one. Saturn will be aspecting Xi Jinping's 3rd house. And so what I've put here is pressure on travel and communications, zero COVID policy still in place, like I was saying. So something could come out of the dark here. This eclipse could mean a reset in the narrative in some way, or there could be some stories via media or social media that come out of China that could be shocking or surprising. But there's something here to do with rules and regulations and the communications of that could be affected. If we look here, the opposition, this is looking at Xi Jinping's Pluto, and Xi Jinping's Pluto is also Gandanta, which means drowning. And this is natally in his chart. Vladimir Putin also has the same thing as well. This is when you're dealing with really deep, dark people, let's put it that way, because Pluto is the god of the underworld anyway. Fascism, control, power, mind bending, all of this kind of stuff. And if it's Gandanta and drowning, it means there's even more karma and all that stuff attached to it. So Saturn is aspecting that here, emphasizing that. So this will be inclining him to be almost like a control freak in a way, because Saturn does deal with control, restraint. So he's wanting to even emphasize his power even more. It's like, I will never leave power. And that's one of the things as well that he's trying to do. He might be, I think he's being voted in for historic, 3rd term or whatever. So he doesn't want to leave until he believes it's the end. But here too, Saturn is also looking at his 8th house. Jupiter is aspecting his 8th house. Again, we take this ascendant with a pinch of salt. But either way, Jupiter would be expanding those things, and there it is with Chiron. So he's going to be trying to exert his power, turn the screw all the more, but then there's all of this bubbling and seething going on within the country of China. People may be potentially even uprising, but the people are very unhappy. But he's trying to control the proletariat, because the 6th house also deals with the proletariat, and Saturn is there with Rahu taking things to extremes, and that's natal Rahu. What else do I need to cover? Yeah, his moon's being affected. Oh, if we look down here as well, Neptune is with Saturn in the 2nd house, money, finances, but this can deal with losses as well. Neptune can also deal with losses. And here Saturn and Neptune are together. However, when they're together, this can also mean making one's dreams come true. So obviously that's happened for him a lot. This can also have a lot to do with drugs and pharmaceuticals as well. And it's quite interesting because the antibodies for, the thing that begins with letter C, are not very prevalent in China at all. So this is why they're trying to maintain this zero COVID policy, but maybe something will bust through. Yeah, maybe there's some secret will come out. Jupiter is aspecting and expanding that area. For him, the lunar eclipse falls into, again, it's sidereal Aries, and that's potentially his 9th house, but it's also here with Venus. Yeah, and Venus deals with what? Money, assets, trade, goods, services. The 9th house is an international house. So I put here assets and finances of all kinds could be affected, as well as trade and services. So the lunar eclipse could really bring some stuff out on November 8th for Xi Jinping in regards to finances. Could this be where it's hard to contain the contagion or the breakdown of the real estate market? We will have to see. When we look at the transit of Saturn via the Navamsha, we see here as well that Saturn is in the second house. Assets, money, finance, pressure on that. If we look, he's also looking at the fourth house. Homeland, yeah, homeland, security, all of that kind of stuff. And Pluto is there, planet of transformation. Transformation of homeland and security in China, potentially. Saturn is also looking at the 8th house here, sex, death, rock and roll, transformation, and also looking at his 11th house and the moon. Saturn and moon are not friends, putting pressure on the mind. So it looks like from the D9, it looks like these transits are going to be a bit more tricky for Xi Jinping. Even as he's consolidating his own personal power, there could be issues. Now, finally, Putinshka. Yeah, Putinshka, my God. If we look here, Mars will be going into his 9th house. Philosophies, ideas, beliefs, ideologies, stuff like that. Passion, yeah, but can also deal with fanaticism. So what we see here, now this is very worrying. This is very worrying. Out of all the charts, Putinshka's chart is the most dangerous. Hands down, very dangerous. Mars, transiting Mars, going into his 9th house. But look, it's there with Uranus. Uranus is what? Sudden shocks and surprises. Earthquakes, either physical or political. Aviation as well, things to do with the sky, things that fly about. He's got a lot of drones going on as well. Also deals with aeroplanes. So it can even deal with aeroplane crashes and stuff like that. But it also deals with electricity and energy. What has he done? He's just struck some of the power stations in Ukraine. Yeah, so here, Mars is a trigger, is an activator. So this is that concern, of course, over the nuclear button, shall we say. Will he push it? We will have to see. Yeah, Mars is going to be agitating. But Mars is in for a few weeks, hovers around 1 degree, then comes back into sidereal Taurus. But next year, from March next year, Mars goes back in and will get closer to Uranus. So if it's not this year, he might try and push the button next year. But let's hope there is a sudden shock and surprise that maybe liberates the world from Putinshka. We will have to see. Of course, we can't wish these things too much, but you know what I mean. Here, Mars is aspecting Putinshka's 12th house, energizing the 12th house, which contains the Sun, the kingdom, Saturn, rules and regulations, government, Neptune, secrets and scandals, and Mercury, communications. So this is probably showing the communication breakdown that's happening, where Putinshka is struggling to control the narrative. Oh, there we are. There we are, 47 minutes. Putinshka is struggling to what? Control the narrative, yeah? Mars and Saturn are not friends. So here, Saturn is agitating this Saturn. Mars is agitating this Saturn and this Neptune. The secrets are coming out. 12th house also deals with what? Endings and beginnings. Beginnings and endings. Could there be an ending? Also deals with what? Prisons and hospitals. The Sun also represents the vitality, the energy. So this aspect for the next few weeks is probably going to be very challenging for Putin. Putinshka is going to be hovering, tempted to push a certain button, but he's also going to become more erratic, more vicious in regards to energy and power. He's really going to try and put Ukraine in the dark, effectively, and he's already begun. But at the same time, the domestic situation at home is probably likely to get worse because Mars is agitating that house. Mercury is also a planet of what? Communications, next to Neptune, secret scandals. It's all coming out about what? Saturn, government, Sun, the kingdom, the identity, the ego structure of Putinshka. So if we look, there's that. If we look here, Jupiter is looking at the Sun of Putin. So that is actually giving a little bit of protection there. Giving a little bit of protection. It's looking at his second house as well, which deals with speech and finances. So we've seen as well, Jupiter in a way is helping his finances a little bit because there was the dip, and now Russia's kind of coming back up and trying to get money from elsewhere. And obviously, you know, the OPEC plus, his friends there have been trying to what? Boost the oil price. See how these things kind of work. However, Jupiter's also looking at Putin's 10th house. However, this is activating this Ketu, snip, snip, and Pluto. Look at that. Putinshka and Xi Jinping both have a Pluto that is Gandanta, drowning, karma. It makes it even more intense and discombobulated. Putin too is looking to do what? Consolidate his power, but in a very cruel and vicious kind of way. Yeah, because Ketu with Pluto, oof, my God, that's a combination. And he's also got Rahu with Rahu in Capricorn as well. But for Putinshka, Saturn is in the 4th house, which is what? Homeland. He's trying to control things in the homeland, but there's pressure there. Rahu is making it more extreme. If we look up here, or if we look here, Saturn is putting pressure on Putinshka's 1st house, the identity, yeah, the personality. I put here, eclipse falls in identity and face to the world, the body, and social standing. So this is very tricky here. This eclipse is happening at 7 degrees 49 minutes of sidereal Libra, but it's going to be happening here in his 1st house, his sense of identity. So you see, he's wanting to push the button, he's wanting to maintain control, but at the same time, he's being eclipsed as well. The situation, he's struggling to control the narrative, and that's going to make him a bit more volatile. So there's that. Also as well, Saturn is looking at his 6th house, which also deals with what? Health and enemies. And I put here, house of enemies and health under pressure. But Jupiter there, is he making it worse? For Libra ascendants, Jupiter is a tricky planet because he is the lord of the 6th house. And the 6th house deals with what? Enemies. Trying to overcome obstacles. Jupiter can expand these things, and he's also there with Chiron. So it's almost as if, I would go as far to say, behind the scenes, it's almost like Putinshka's enemies are increasing. And it's to do with the unraveling of the domestic narrative, but I don't think they're going to strike yet. But Chiron, the wounded healer, is here also as well. What's been happening with Putinshka? He's had to have what? Operations on his health, bowel cancer and all these things, maybe nerve trouble, stuff like that. Jupiter is expanding it out. Jupiter's going to go back and is being in retrograde, and then he's going to start going direct again. So, you know, there could be health issues that flare up again for Putin. However, this aspect here on the sun, the vitality, it could be that there could be it's a mixed bag. Jupiter is expanding and irritating, but also helping a little bit as well. So it's kind of like this. But overall, the picture is not great because Saturn's putting a lot of pressure down. And so is Mars. Mars is agitating the 12th house, but not only that, his 3rd house, aspecting himself of communications in Sagittarius, which can also be fanatical, and natal Chiron is here. So there is wounding rhetoric in a way. He's being wounded, but he's also wanting to wound others. 3rd house also deals with what? Travel, communications, the hands, efforts. Mars here is very strong in the sign of Sagittarius, but can get overzealous, overexcited. Mars is aspecting Mars, so it's almost like in his communication he's becoming more aggressive, more harsh, more ideological, wanting to send people out and be, you know, his minions, like he was mobilizing. He said he's kind of calmed that down now because obviously a lot of people have left the country. Again, the effect of the eclipses. So here you see, this is a man trying to hold on to power, trying to control the narrative, but not being quite able to do it. The lunar eclipse for Putinshka falls onto his Jupiter, natal Jupiter. So literally his Jupiter, which is the planet of luck, is being eclipsed. And the eclipse is going to be at 21 degrees and 50 minutes of sidereal Aries on the 8th of November. So this eclipse could actually be very profound for him. The moon also deals with the public, yeah, the public. So there could be some change of fortunes for Putinshka in some regard, in regards to the public, in Russia in particular as well. So that's quite interesting. So we'll have to see, is it going to bring him luck and fortune? Or is there going to be something that's going to affect his luck and fortune with this Jupiter being eclipsed, which is also the lord of the 6th house? Let's not forget, Jupiter deals with the 3rd house and the 6th house for Libra ascendants. So if the lord of the 6th house is being eclipsed in the 7th house, and the 7th house deals with foreign lands, yeah, 1st house here, 7th house here, so Libra, Aries, 1st house, 7th house, eclipse happening there. What have I written here? Lunar eclipse falls in house of open enemies and foreign lands and trade and the public. Does the West or the Russian people attack? Yeah. So could there be something where the fortunes change so much for Putinshka, or maybe he does something that's so outrageous that it leads to some kind of attack? Does he miscalculate? Does he try and press the button? And if he does press the button, does that lead to basically NATO, the world, coming in and just ending it? Or does he get very close to pressing the button and people within his own camp are just like, enough? We'll have to see. Or is there a turn of luck and fortune for him? But it seems like he's running out of ammo and there's even more sanctions coming. So I'm inclined to say it may not be so fortunate for him. So we'll have to see how that goes. I've mentioned his Gandanta. And I've mentioned here, so if we look here for, not yet, in his Navamsha, Saturn sits in the 2nd house, money, speech, finances, that kind of stuff. Looking at his 4th house, homeland, yeah, things to do with the homeland, luxuries, goods, domestic politics. Also looking at his 11th house of great gains and associates, rubbing shoulders. So Saturn putting pressure there. Maybe he's not going to have as much international support. It's already been waning. But the giveaway here is that Saturn is looking at the Sun, which is the vitality, in the 8th house of sex, death, and rock and roll, in the sign of Cancer for Putin's Navamsha. So could it be that that Saturn brings enough pressure to affect how Putin operates in the world? We shall have to see. We're almost at the hour, so I'll just let you know the lunar eclipse becomes exact at 6:02 a.m. in Washington City, D.C. on the 8th of November, and it is also going to be with Rahu and Uranus. Very unpredictable. Yeah, this lunar eclipse, like anything could happen. So it's like, do your votes and stuff, but stay vigilant. There's going to be people trying to cheat, yeah, because Rahu deals with what? Liars, cheaters, scammers. There's an electronic element here as well, so they could be trying to do it electronically, or, you know, there's going to be mishagos going on. It could even things to do with like earthquakes or political earthquakes. Could it be the political earthquake in the sense that the Democrats do way better, yeah? Or is it the case that the Democrats do really well and the GOP try and steal it? Anything of that is relevant. If we look here with the solar eclipse, which is coming up on the 25th of October, it becomes exact at 6:48 a.m. Washington City time. And it's at 7 degrees and 49 minutes, which I've said. So this will always be a significant for leaders as well. And here it is happening in sidereal Libra. So whistle stop tour, almost an hour here. I hope you guys found that interesting. We can see those mixed bags. Let's see how that pans out. These are tumultuous times. Keep the hope, keep the faith. Pluto is doing its composting and it's transforming, bringing up all the dirt for everyone and everything like that. But this is also part of an alchemical process. Many of us are having to face shadow or things from the past, but also mea culpa transformation, turning the lead into gold. Yeah, we have to see the ugliness and the cray-cray in order to fix it. Prayers for Joe Biden as well, that he looks after his health and doesn't overdo it. And that also as well that the midterms do well. And we'll see what the solar eclipse on October 25th brings and what the lunar eclipse brings just a couple of weeks later on November 8th. All right, I'll leave it there. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.